Greetings and salutations, and thank you for clicking on this video. Today I'm going to introduce you to the new XBT version 2.0. Yes, I know for those of you who have been following this project, I said it wouldn't be available until after Christmas, but it came together rather quickly, and I've decided to go ahead and turn it loose on the world. So you can look at this as an early Christmas present from me to you. If you have not been following the XBT project and you have no idea what XBT is, let me tell you. It is the external backup tool. It is a program that lets you make very reliable, exact backups of what is in your Linux system's user directory. It works on Linux Mint 18 series, and it works on Ubuntu 16.04 and up. It has been tested with most of the desktops that are available for Ubuntu, and it works fine with all of those desktops. So feel free to download it and play with it. It is a tiny program. It doesn't leave a very large footprint on your system, and it's easy to get rid of as well. Those of you who are using the older version of the XBT program, which is 1.7, if you happen to be using that on Ubuntu 14.04 or Linux Mint 17 series, you need to stay with that because the new XBT 2.0 does not work properly on older versions of Ubuntu. So it's 16.04 and up or Linux Mint 18 and forward that this is going to work properly. In this video, I'm going to basically divide this into three sections. We're going to install it, and then we are going to actually go through the program, and we're going to look at all of the different features of XBT, and then toward the very end of the video, I'm going to walk through the code a little bit. For those of you who care about those sorts of things, we'll talk a little bit about its theory of operation, and it is hugely different than anything that you've seen before on this channel. So we'll talk more about that at the end of the video. To download this program, it is hosted at GitHub. There is a Git repository for this. So many people have asked for that I went ahead and did that. So that is where you are downloading it from. There will be links in the description for this video for not only the download link to the GitHub repository, but also you will find links in there to the GitHub page and to the Easy Linux web page where this is going to be featured on the bash scripts page. So lots of places to get this. And when you download it, this is what you're going to get, is this little file right here. Now I'm actually going to install this twice, and the reason why I'm going to do it is because it's a little bit different between Linux Mint and Ubuntu. We'll do Linux Mint first. Linux Mint's actually the easiest way to go. Just download this thing, put it wherever your browser puts it or wherever you want it, and then click on it, and the Archive Manager will open up, and you'll see that there is a directory in there. Double click in that directory. Now we have the instructions, which are in the README file, and if you would like to read them, all you have to do is click on them, and they will open right up in your text editor, and you can glance at those. Then click on the XBT 2.0 installation. You see we have files in there. Do not run them from here. If you run them from here, you're just going to have them open up in a text editor. So what we want to do is to extract this directory, which is XBT 2.0. You can put it anywhere you want. You put it on your desktop. You can put it in your downloads folder. It makes no difference. So I'll put it in downloads just to make it easier, and then we'll close that. And now double click on that, and what you're looking for is XBT install. This is the script that actually installs XBT onto your system, and it creates a menu entry for XBT, and it puts an icon in there so that you will be able to use XBT from your menu, and once it's there, it will show up under accessories in Linux Mint. So we'll just go ahead and do that real quick, and we run in terminal. And then it pauses and waits for us. You can read that little message, hit continue, give it your password, and now it installs XBT. It's actually done, and when it gets done, it just closes the window there. That's how terminal applications work when they're integrated with the desktop, and that's how the new XBT is designed to work primarily. It does work from a terminal. You can just issue commands, and I'll show you how to do that a little bit later on in the video. So XBT is now installed. It would be a really good idea at this point for you to log out of your desktop and log back in. And that is just to make sure that those files are found by the desktop and it's going to show up in the menu. That's a nice thing that you might want to do. Let's see if we got lucky. Well, it did show back up, and I actually have it in my favorites because I've had it installed on here before, of course. So it did work this time. I did notice during my testing that occasionally the Cinnamon desktop would get a little nasty once you do this. I have no idea why. It does it anytime you install software. It's a bug they need to work on, I think. And so log out and log in if it becomes crappy toward you, or if it locks up entirely when you click the installer, then all you got to do is use alternate control and backspace, and that will log you out automatically. Log back in, everything should be there, all the files should be there, it should be fine. I don't know, that could very well have been because I was uninstalling and installing this a lot. Okay, so we have our program. Let's go ahead and open it up. And the first thing that we are going to need to do is create an XBT drive. We can't use the program without it. As a matter of fact, if I start just picking choices here, let's go to 1. Look, we get an error, we get an error, we get an error, we get an error. So you have to create that drive first, and of course this status down here will tell you that it can find no XBT drive, but it says drives are plugged in. Do you want to create one now? Absolutely, that's what we're going to do because it's the first thing that you have to do. Now before, with the 1.7 version, I was showing people how to do this manually in the video, and a lot of people had problems with that, so now it's included in the program, and this actually does some other things as well. It wipes the drive before it does this. It makes sure that it's totally clear. That's why you get this big warning message right here. Do not use a USB drive that has your family pictures on it or your music collection or whatever, because it's going to get wiped. You can start from scratch. Alright, so let's go ahead and choose yes. Actually, I'll choose no to show you what happens. So if you decide, no, I'm not going to do this right now, I need to go find another drive, that's fine. You just clicked on it to see what it was all about. It just takes you right back to the main menu. Now you go get the drive that you want, you plug it in the system, and now you can go ahead and choose Y. Any other choice will just dump you out. Give it your password. Now here's where you're going to choose a drive. If you had more than one drive in the system, then you would need to actually put in the number of that drive, so make double sure that you're choosing the right drive here. But in our case, we only have one, so all we have to do is press enter, and it tells us exactly where that drive shows up, what size it is. And then we actually get another chance not to do this. And this is because you may have made a mistake and you went, oh, well, no, I don't want to do that. Oh, wrong drive. Oops. So if in that case, press enter again, it dumps you out. And this time around, it tells you that, you've been canceled, and it just puts you back to the main menu. So we'll run back through that one more time. Yes. We'll choose that drive. And this time, I'm going to type in YES, and I'll press enter. And now the drive is actually being formatted. Last chance, folks. Too late. Those pictures are gone. Forget about all that music. We are starting from scratch. And while this is doing this, let me explain a little bit about why this is important. Somebody said, why do you have the program tied to a particular drive? And that is because if you just used any old USB drive for XBT, what would happen is that you might run into a problem where the file system on the drive itself has a problem. It has an issue, and you don't know about that, so your backup is not reliable. This takes care of that. This wipes the drive and starts from scratch. And also, having a specific drive that is set up to do this avoids a lot of confusion for users. A lot of us have a bunch of USB sticks and drives laying around. Well, in this case, just put a piece of tape on it and use a magic marker and put your XBT drive. Now you know where your backups are. So there's a lot of reasons for doing that. A lot of little things that will become apparent as we roll along with the program. How long will it take for this to do this? It depends on the drive. It depends on how fast your computer goes. And it depends mainly on the bus speed. So if you are using USB 3 and you're using an SSD, that will go really, really quick. If you are using USB 2 and a spinning drive, as we are for this demonstration, then that's about how long it's going to take. If you're using USB 1, God bless you. Go get some coffee, get you a book to read, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so once this is done, unplug that drive and plug it back into the computer so it can be recognized by the system. Now, usually the desktop gives us some sort of indication. In Linux Mint, it will open up a directory like that. So we have a drive called XBT, but you notice we don't have permissions to write on it yet. We've got to do our first backup, and then that will be set up for us. So let us go ahead and close this and do that. And then if you just want to make double sure that everything is the way it should be, choose 6. It will go out and look at the drives, and it says it's ready to go. So at this point in time, we would want to do our first backup, but we're not. We're going to do our backup on another computer because I want to show you how to install XBT on Ubuntu. Now, we're using Ubuntu 17.10 with a GNOME desktop. This is the standard vanilla Ubuntu that's out right now, but this should work regardless of what desktop you have. And what we're going to do is go into our downloads. Now, I have already put the file in here, and I have already extracted it as well, just to make it easy. So we will go ahead and click on our, let me see, let me go ahead and extract that again. No, I did it right. Okay, something didn't look right to me for a second. Now, in Ubuntu, you're not going to be able to just click on it because all it will do is open up all the code and show it to you in a text editor, and that won't do you any good. So in Ubuntu, just right-click anywhere in this directory, and then just go to terminal, which should pop right up. And now the command we're going to run is /. That tells the system we want to run this inside this directory because this is not ordinarily where executable stuff goes. And XBT, and then install. So I just put in XBT-I, use tab, and it filled in. So now we can install the program. And it works the same way as it did before on Linux Mint. Just press enter, and then it's going to ask for your password. And now it's going to place the files where they need to be. There is a manual installation method where if you are one of those who has a personal bin folder like we've talked about in past videos and you want to drag it in there, then all you have to do is just drag it into your bin folder. If you were using an older version of XBT, like 1.7, and that's where it lives right now, in order to use 2.0 from a terminal, you're going to have to remove that from your bin folder because it will actually go and find that one before it'll find the new one. The new one is installed on the system and it's available for all the other users to use. So it's in a different directory than we ordinarily put it. So now that it is installed, let us see if it appeared in the menu. Pretty sure it will. So let's go to XBT. Yes. Open XBT. And we don't have the drive hooked up, so let's go ahead and do that real quick. So go ahead and hook up our drive. Yep, and there it is. It appears. We can close that downloads. We don't need that open. So the drive is ready. Well, let us refresh here and make sure that the drive is found. Yep, it's going to work. So now we can just run the backup. Now the backup here should not take very long at all because this is just a virtual machine and there's not a whole lot in it. So we can go ahead and stick with this and let it do its backup. And it's done. That was really super fast. And that was a blank drive. So how long does it usually take to do a full backup? Well, that's going to depend on, once again, on how fast your computer is, how fast the drive is, and what sort of USB interface you're going to use. Just to give you a happy medium, a spinning drive on USB 2.0 If you have 150, 200 gigabytes, that's about an hour and a half. So you can figure it out from there. If you have many gigs of data, then this might take some time. So once it runs through the way it did, it shows us that it is complete, and it says successfully completed, and it tells us what time it completed, in case it took its quite some time to run. And now our backup is done. So if you want to check on a situation where if the program, if there's any errors that are produced during the backup period, when that's in a backup state, you really can't do anything with the system. It's going to want to finish. So the errors get stored in a log. So let's go ahead and run that again. And this time I'm going to actually cause an error. I don't recommend you do this for real. I'm doing it just to show you how it works in the video. So I do 1 again and then Control-C. And when I did that, it closed the program. I got to do it really quick. Let me try that one more time. Like I said, don't do this for real, kids. This is just for demonstration purposes. This might mess up your backup, and that would be a bad thing to have happen. So let me see if I can move quick enough to do that. Hit 1 and then Control-C. Well, how about giving it my password first? I missed it again. Nope. I had to generate an error somewhere, and that time around, there's just no way in the world. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. If I didn't generate any errors, well, you're just going to have to take my word for it that errors were generated. So let's look at what we got in the backup log and see if we created any messing around that way. So press number 5, and it opens up the backup log. And it says that all those backups were successful. The reason why is nothing changed. But, okay, so if you did have an error that was reported, like you stopped it too soon, somebody came by and knocked the drive out, it didn't get all the data, then it would show up here in the log. It would also tell you on the screen. So anyway, that was fun. Try that again some other time. Okay, so now we have a successful backup, and we have that on our system. We've looking at the log file, and by the way, the help works kind of the same way. So you go into it, and then you press Q to exit, and it just explains a little bit more about the system, and it also shows the terminal commands. So that's what the help page does. So the next function that I want to show you is restore. Now this is an emergency function that I don't recommend you do unless you put a lot of thought into it, because XBT is set up to leave the files in the open on the drive, and I'll show you that in just a few moments. So like if you accidentally blow out your entire pictures collection, then you can use your file manager and just drag them all back. But what if you're in a situation where, let's say your hard drive fails and you need to put all your data back, and you want it back the way it was? I mean, you want all of your email settings, all that kind of stuff, and you just want to get back to where you were, or maybe you blow out a bunch of data and you don't know what you blew out, but you need to get back to the original. Then you can use the restore function. So press 2 to get to restore, and it's going to ask for your password. And when it goes to that, by the way, it's checking to make sure that the drive is available, and it's also checking to make sure that the correct backup for the host machine that you have this plugged into is there. And if it doesn't, it will tell you that it cannot find the proper directories. That avoids a lot of mistakes right there. So if you get any errors, that means that you don't have the right drive plugged in the machine, or you didn't do a backup, or the backup's been erased. So that's what that means. So I'm going to go ahead and hit yes to continue, and then it's going to tell us to close all the applications that are running, because when you're doing a restore, if you have like your web browser open, you have your email client, and those things go to write to your home directory while it's doing that, and that stuff is being replaced at the same time, that can cause major instability, and it can make the restore fail, and it can also crash your desktop, crash your program, that sort of thing. And so therefore make sure your applications are closed. And now we do the restore. Now you notice it only took a couple of seconds here for that to happen, simply because of the fact that we didn't change anything. But if you had changed a bunch of stuff or lost a bunch of stuff, then it would put it all back. If you're starting from scratch on a new install, then the nice thing about this is that if you're using like the CYA program, or you're using TimeShift in Linux Mint, all that stuff's going to be restored as well. So you can do a generic basic install. You could just install the stuff, and then you could restore your home directory with XBT, and then you can actually use CYA or timeshift to restore your system to where it was. It makes it a lot easier to recover if you have a huge major crash like a hard drive failure. Okay, so this is all done, and then the program is going to exit when we press enter. And the reason why it's going to exit here is because you really need to exit and restart the computer now. You really should not use the desktop. In our case, not much changed and it's not that big of a deal. But you want to make sure that you refresh everything. So reboot the computer at this point, and then you can exit XBT. So XBT waves goodbye. So let me show you some other tricks about XBT real quick, and then we're going to move on to talking about using it from a terminal. Those of you who intend to use it from a menu and you have seen everything that you need to see, you can quit watching the video now, because now we're going to get into something else. Oh, before you leave, let me tell you one thing. To uninstall XBT, and you use this program, this little script that's in here. Let me go to downloads, and we'll open up the XBT 2.0 files once again. So if you decide you don't want to use this program, you can run this uninstall script the same way we ran install. Just type uninstall instead, or if you're in Linux Mint, you can just click on it, and it will remove the program from the system. XBT is very tiny, and it doesn't take up a lot of space, and it only uses 3 files. That's it. And the only thing that it's putting in here is your desktop shortcut in the proper place so that the desktop can find it and add it to the menu, an icon, and this script goes to a user local bin. That's it. So it's totally non-invasive. You can just run the uninstall. If you get errors on the uninstall, that means that it was already removed, basically. It can't find the files, or you installed it manually, which we'll talk about in just a few moments. So now for the more advanced users, let me show you some tricks here. People who are more interested in getting into some of the deeper things about XBT. And I will also show you how to run it from a terminal. So I did want to point this out, that you'll notice that when it moves from one operation to the next, that it jumps onto the it jumps to another page. It clears the screen. So I'm going to run a backup real quick just so we generate some output here. And then I'm going to show you that that's not really gone. So if you want to see what the results were for rsync or something flashed by that you want to take a look at, you can usually just hover over top of it on your desktop and scroll up, and it'll take you back to it. And that's if you're running it inside a captured terminal, terminal emulator on the desktop, and not like at TTY or something like that. So that's one thing I did want to show you. And the other thing I wanted to show you is that exiting XBT. Now, you can always just close the terminal at this point by clicking here. You can also use Control-C to exit. But Control-D is not going to work. So let me try Control-D. You notice that it says that's an invalid choice, because at this point it's not looking at keyboard input other than what's on that menu. But Control-C definitely exits the program. So if you want to use XBT from a terminal, you want to do all those things that we were going to do, then there are commands available there in the help menu. I will show you how to do a backup from the terminal. So let's just open up a terminal. And then you want to make sure that your XBT drive is plugged in and up and running, because if it doesn't find it, it's going to error out and it's going to stop. So the command to do that would be XBT backup, like so. And then go ahead and give it your password, and you're gone. Do not run XBT with sudo. If you do, what's going to happen is it's going to error out. It won't be able to find what it needs to find. So let me Control-C here and we'll try that. So if I do sudo XBT and then put the backup back in and I run it, you notice it says, well, it would help if I would. I got an error trying to generate an error. That's a good one. I haven't done that one before. Let me see what I've got going on here. Get back and focus back to my terminal. It's too far down at the bottom of the screen anyway. So let's do that correctly to make sure it works. XBT, back up. Once, please. Thank you. All right, now let's try and do that with sudo. Ah! My cursor doesn't want to go where... There we go. I got it. Sorry about that, gang. Okay, so let's try and run it with sudo and see what it does. See, now we get an error. It can't find a drive, even though the drive is plugged in. The reason why is because you're running as the wrong user. It wants to make sure that you are the person who is going to be using this backup. You as the administrator of that system. It checks to make sure that that drive belongs to you before it'll do anything. And that's kind of a security feature. So nobody can come into your system from outside unless they know your password and actually use it to mess with your data on your system. Now, they could plug it into their system and they can read the data, of course. I mean, it's not completely secure, but there's a level of security there where, you know, it keeps people like your kids or something from messing around with your stuff. And if they don't have your password, it's not going to let them do it. And it is not going to find it. So, anyway, let me go here and we'll go ahead and try that again, and we'll do that the right... Oh, I've already demonstrated that. Never mind. So, that is how you run it from a terminal. Well, let's run one more from a terminal. Control-C to get out, and then let's go ahead and just pull up a log file and take a look. And then we'll move on. So, it's XBT -- log. Not equals. Okay, so now it gives the log viewer. You quit, go back to the main menu, and exit once again. So there it is running from a terminal. So that is the first part of the video. Well, actually the first and second parts. We've looked at running the program. We have looked at the installation process at the beginning. Next, let's take a walk through the code and we'll talk a little bit about what makes XBT tick. Okay, gang, this part of the video is for those of you who are into code and want to know a little bit about the theory of operations. And the first thing that you're going to notice if you actually look at this is that the new XBT is much, much, much bigger because this is a program. This is not just a script that runs. It just happens to be written in Bash and it runs in a terminal. And it's really designed with the idea of running it in one of the terminals that are spun up by the menu. When you choose the option on the desktop launcher that says Run in Terminal, that's an entirely kind of different environment than just opening up a terminal. And so that had to be kept in mind. And also, since there are so many more features, then this had to be a more logical and orderly program. Now, as I mentioned in the last video where I was talking about it, in the kind of the preview thing, I was already working on this, and then a couple of people sent me some stuff. Jody James, he sent me a big bunch of code, and also Jeremy O'Connell has been helping all along. So I have to give credit where credit is due. Some of this comes from them. But the basic idea, I was already working on it when they sent it. So let's just walk through it. The first thing it's going to do is declare these variables. And essentially what it's going to do is create its own variables from the variables that are already part of the system. So like user and hostname are actually standard system variables that run in Bash all the time in your terminal. But I'm capturing them for my own use. It seems to be more reliable that way. And also when you're working with those system variables, sometimes you have to put quotes around them and sometimes it doesn't find it. And this was something that was a problem. So I finally gave up and said, okay, I'll just transfer them into my own variables. So those are the main two variables that it gets from the system. So the first function here you're going to see is backup. And this is what does a full backup. So I'm just going to walk through this. I'm not going to really talk about, technically every twist and turn, but what it does. So the first thing it does is it makes sure that an XBT drive exists. And it looks for a drive that has XBT Drive as a directory on that drive. That's all it does. It looks for the directory. And if that directory exists and you have ownership of that drive, then it should be just fine. Actually, you don't even need ownership at the drive at this point. And this is where it will if there's an error, this is where it will show the error message, and it will stop what it's doing, and it will return to the menu, which in this case is called greeting. And then the next thing it's going to do is make sure that you have permission to be able to run a backup. So that is checking for sudo permissions, and it basically just runs sudo ls and throws the output into dev null, which turns that on. Hang on, let's see who's at the door. Where were we? Okay, took care of that. Seems lately that people keep banging on my door all the time. I'm going to have to move out of the country or something. I'm a hermit by nature, you know. Anyway, we got that done. Let's see what we were talking about. We were talking about setting the permissions to make sure that you had sudo privileges. The next thing that it does is it goes ahead and changes the owner on the drive to make sure that you are the person that owns the data on that drive, and you will have 100% access to it. And let's see, we start creating a log file here. It creates a timestamp to put into the log file. And then it makes sure that the directory for the host machine is available on the drive. It does that here. If it's not there, then it will create it for the backup. And then we get into actually creating the backup. And a lot of this is sent to the log file. Once that is done, it checks on the exit status of the rsync function that's right here. And if that is good, then it will... First of all, it's going to dump all the input while rsync was running. And the reason why it's doing that with this read command right here is because if you type anything on the keyboard while rsync is doing its thing, it was holding on to that input, and then it was kind of messing it up for the next stage. So that's the very first thing it does. It makes sure that this is okay, and then it dumps whatever input accidentally was put in there. My cat actually was the person who helped me find that because he walked across the keyboard and messed it up. Anyway, so if everything is good there, then what it does is it says no errors, and it adds that to the log, and it goes ahead and it finishes the log and makes sure that that is where it needs to be. If there is a problem, if there are any errors encountered, then it jumps here. Once again, it dumps that input, any accidental input, and then what it does is it will tell you that there were errors, and the errors will automatically already be placed in the log at this point. So it wraps up the log, and then it returns to the main menu there. And then it syncs up the drives. This is if everything is okay. Once again, we go back to the main menu. So that's what that does, that part. So that is the backup function right there. The next one is the restore function. So when you ask to restore the system, this is what it does. The first thing that it's going to do is make sure the drive is there. We've already been that. And if it's not there, been through that. If it's not there, it'll give you an error and return to the main menu. Then it's going to check for your permissions to make sure that you can actually carry out the function. And then it is going to check to make sure that the directory for the host machine is actually on the drive, and it makes sure here that it has access to it. And at that point, it will, if it does not, then it will display this error on the screen to let you know that you have an XBT drive, but for some reason or other, you didn't do a backup on that drive. So if you have more than one of these drives, for some reason, that is to catch that right there and let you know. And then finally, it warns you that everything is going to be deleted, and it gives you a chance to opt out here. So if it says, yes, then it goes on, and it starts the restoring process. Once again, it checks the output of the rsync function, the rsync command, and if it's good, then it tells you that the backup worked properly, and it goes to this part right here. Restoration is complete is what you're going to get, and then it is going to exit XBT. Once you tell it that you can move on here. That's the press any key to continue function. Is right there in the read command. If there's a problem, then it's going to tell you that there were errors, and it is not going to exit. It's going to tell you to do it again and make sure that it works this time. If you get errors a second time, then probably what you're going to need to do in that point is do a manual restore, because that means there's something wrong with really, honestly, you should not ever get errors here, because when that function is run in reverse, it simply blanks out whatever's in the home directory of the host machine and replaces it with what's in the backup. So that would mean that you are having problems with your drives. That would be a hardware error of some sort going on, not necessarily a software error or your computer's glitching. There's something crazy going on, something running in the background that's messing up, and you may need to, restore the machine and look deeper into it. So this is where it returns you if you cancel the restoration, and then we're out of the restore function. Now this is the one that's the most complicated, and I've got to give credit where credit was due, because this was actually inspired by Jody, who really wrote all the code for it and did some really interesting things here. So I incorporated a whole lot of what he did, and thank you very much for sending that along, because I certainly do appreciate it. Some pretty esoteric stuff in here, actually. So this will, basically what this is going to do is it's going to, if you run this function, the first thing it's going to do is just triple check that there's a drive in the machine. So at this point, you can see this right here. All it's doing is looking to see that there is a drive in the machine, a USB drive. And if there is, then it will continue. And of course, it'll error out if there's no drive in there, in case you accidentally push the button to do the drive setup and there's no drive. And then it's going to go ahead, if everything's cool, it's going to echo the warning on the screen, and it's going to let you know what's going on. And then it asks you for the first choice, and if you press Y, then it generates the list of the drives. It goes and checks those in the system, and then it goes here and creates that list. It uses sed to format it the right way. Right here, it creates a temporary file here that will end up going into the temp directory, and then as soon as it gets that done, then it will just display it on the screen. If there's nothing, if you somehow or another would choose nothing, no drive at all, and you got this far, then that would dump you back into the main menu. This is probably an error you will never run into, but it's just one of those strange possibilities that could possibly happen. And then we once again confirm, and then we go into the format sequence, which goes through, and the first thing that it's going to do is unmount the drive. If it's mounted, it shouldn't be, but if it is, it makes sure it's not there. And then the next thing it does is we write 2 gigabytes of data to the beginning of the drive, just zeros. That will blow out any partitions, all of the stuff left over from any of the different file systems. It's all gone. Basically, we're starting out with a new drive, and then we create new partitions, and we do the labeling. I don't have to go through all of that. That's pretty much just normal command line stuff there. And then we are done with that. And it goes back to the greeting. It lets us know that it completed the way it should, and that we might want to unplug and plug the drive back in before the system sees it. So the next thing here is the greeting itself, which is just the main menu function right here. Kind of an interesting little bit of code that I ran across while I was putting this together was I wanted to actually kill the cursor. So I didn't want any cursor on the screen. That's this one right here. So that's a tput command. So that will get rid of the cursor, so we didn't have blinking cursor. And these are the choices that for the menu. So it establishes a case statement for the menu, and that's how it does that. And then we have help. These are kind of the functions stuck at the end, I guess you could say. We have help right here, and all this does is just echo this page of data into the less utility. And then finally, and then return you to the greeting, of course, if you get out. And then finally, the logs function. The first thing that this is going to do is make sure that the log exists. If there's no log, then you are going to get this error message here that says no log is found. And it will just say you can't do that until you have a log created. Of course, if you press the log function before you've actually run a backup, then no log's created. So it'll just dump you right out. And it's pretty simple, actually. It just puts it, it grabs the log and it tosses it into the less utility, and it tells less to go and read from the bottom. So that's what the G does there. And then when it's done, when you hit Q, it just dumps you back to the main menu. This is the execution section. So the first thing it does is it goes through and looks for arguments. So we have arguments for help, log, backup, and restore. This is if you run XBT from a terminal and you use these particular flags. That's what it will do. And then finally, you get to actually run the program. It echoes greetings and salutation and takes you to the menu. And so that's how it works. That is the whole XBT script there. It's been a huge learning experience to do this myself, and I appreciate all the help and encouragement from a lot of people, because this moves on from being just a script to actually writing a program. And I really like doing this because I don't think this is used a lot in the Linux world, is that you have this functionality where you can write programs not just in Bash but in Python or anything, any language you'd like. You don't have to worry about dealing with graphics. You don't have to worry about dealing with toolkits like GTK or Qt or anything. And you can get the functionality that you want. You can have it on the desktop and available to the user without having to worry about dealing with what versions of those desktop environments you are working with and the toolkits and all that stuff. The toolkits change a lot. What's really nice about this one is that because it uses pretty much POSIX standard Linux tools that show up, they're not going to change that much over time. So this program should be good to go for the entire run of Ubuntu 18.04, let's say, which is going to make this program useful for a long, long time. What is that going to be, 2023? So that's pretty cool. Before it needs any changes. It doesn't mean that it can't be changed. And there are a couple of functions in here that are incompatible with Ubuntu 14.04, and those incompatibilities are I could have addressed them, but I'd actually have to remove some features to make that happen, or really try and figure out different ways to do things. And so since Ubuntu 14.04 and Linux Mint 17.3, they don't have that much support. What is it, about 18 months more support? They go away in April of 2019. So that's about 18 months of support. Then I figured, well, I'll just leave XBT 1.7 up there, which is a much simpler program, but does work in 14.04 based stuff. And you guys can get that if you want to. So that's it, gang. I will really appreciate you watching the video all the way to the end here. This is the end section is really for the nerds. And this is on GitHub, so you can check out the code and download it and play with it for yourself if you want to. You know, I will, if you come across anything that can be improved, let me know. I might add it back in. But this, as far as features are concerned, this is what this is supposed to do. I'm not going to add anything else to it. This is XBT. You want to write a different program and you want to make it do incremental snapshot style backups that you can roll back to. If you want configuration files that exclude directories, all that kind of stuff, you need to do that for yourself. It's not going to go into the main program. And the reason why is because this program is really aimed at people who are new or not computer savvy, and it's supposed to be just super stupid easy to use. And the idea here is just to have a backup, just to have a very well-vetted, valid backup that has all of the proper permissions, and the file system hierarchy is what it should be, and the inodes and everything is what it's supposed to be, so there's no problem putting it back later. And it's mainly for clients. I mean, when I was writing the program, I was thinking about my mom. So there you go. All right. Thank you for watching. Do check out Easy Linux on the web. Check out Easy Linux on Facebook. And also check out freedompenguin.com for lots of really cool stories about Linux and contributions from people like myself. There's always something interesting there to look at. And I am gone. I hope you enjoy the new XBT. I'm really looking forward to your feedback. Thank you for watching.